small screen, engaging platform, and the conversion rates, especially in retail and travel, are suffering the most. That's actually something that we're very concerned about when we look at this data. We also see that those who are at the best side of the distribution curve are starting to pull away farther and farther. Every year we do this research from the average, which says that anyone who's investing, and I believe all of these changes are related to mobile. I will also say that the United States is suffering worse than Europe is, which I was surprised about. But what's happening is that mobile is creating a lot of these engagement challenges. And when we start to step back and look at what's happening to business, you see that, for example, mobile advertising, which is the lifeblood of Facebook and Twitter and Google to an even larger degree, which is part of the reason why they made that change, is not as valuable because a mobile visit is not engaging enough, which is why you're seeing the conversation shift to, well, it's because your site is not engaging enough. It's not, our traffic is not. So the mobile advertisers want to kind of take back some of that value by pushing out, websites into becoming more mobilely engaging. And at the same time, it's very challenging for websites to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed in Mark Zablan's opening address yesterday at our event, he said something like there were 44 journey managers in the audience. So this whole idea of customer journey has become much more important to brands. And Doug, I know when it comes to consumption, it often relates to this whole area of content marketing and how can you build engaging, repeatable journeys with customers. I mean, given that there seems to be some challenges with these consumption rates, what do you think is holding companies back?
It's an interesting one, really. I was gratified to see, looking at the technology column, which is pretty much a B2B column in this data, that B2B guys held up, and on some measures like repeat visits. You might expect that because a longer purchase cycle, it demands people come back and educate more. And B2B is getting really good at content, the kind you would stay for. So some of those rates surprise me.
Yeah.
Other things, we have a lot of catching up to do. The media entertainment guys know how to keep people on site. But they're I call them the attention sluts. That's what they do. They live and die by attention. So they've gotten very, very good at it. I do think it's a little dangerous to say, well, the experience is bad, so engagement's going down. I think people on mobiles may be coming to do different things, and those things might be shorter things to do, quicker things to do. And some of that may be quite natural on a mobile platform, and it would be alarming to see those go down, but it could be actually the right interaction for that moment. In general, the kind of inhibitors to the consumption that we see is that there's kind of a conversion obsession, conversion perversion, that we must make this visitor do what we want them to do. And it's ignoring, well, what do they come to do? What do they want to do? And that might be a quick bite-sized thing. But when we're obsessed with that, I think it means that their experience often won't be as good because we're pushing the call to action that we want. They came for something else. And that could be, if we were more open to that, I think we would find consumption would go up. And the other thing I think that inhibits it is the lack of real personalization. I mean, it's still so early. If there were more personalized experiences, I know we'll see consumption going up. Yeah. People just aren't finding these experiences relevant enough.
Yeah. I mean, Jerry, you were talking about creativity there earlier. How can brands kind of inject that creativity into the mobile experience?
Yeah. One way is, for instance, just to invite the visitor. The person coming to the brand, invite that person to collaborate, to contribute, to have their say or create whatever they are looking to create. So I think that's one thing. And I think the reason why we're here is because this massive shift, we're still in the middle of it. We're still in the early phase of the bell curve. And I think even when brands started moving out on the internet, we sort of treated the internet like a static magazine, where you put up things. And I think we're a little bit there still with mobile. Yeah. So I think we will better understand how we tell stories in this medium. The way we have figured out so much how to tell engaging brand stories on desktop, for
I
instance.
think that's actually a good point. It's a good point what you're saying. So a lot of these brands, I think there's one massive mistake what they're making. They're very egocentric to their own brands. So they're actually just focusing on their own content, their own brand, their own messaging and stuff they want to make people aware of, rather than basically bringing customers in and basically giving them the opportunity to have slots on their websites, talking about their experience, talking about their product, setting up, I don't know, video clips or whatever. I think this is one of the biggest problems. Giving an example, at another event of Adobe, which I joined kind of half a year ago, there was a big car manufacturer, and that car manufacturer is quite a funny story. I was buying one of their cars and actually said, okay, so I'm going to do a blog, and this is the blog, it's going to be called Mr. Paceman. So because it's a Paceman was the car. So I set up the blog, I bought the URL, then I realized, oh my goodness, legal issues coming up. So I addressed the marketing department, explained the whole experience. What I wanted was what I was planning to do with that blog. So I said, I'm going to create a magazine for you, just for that brand. You know what happened? Nothing. The blog is still in the same mode. I pushed it out. It's all set up. I could start immediately. But it's going to be held up between compliance, legal, marketing, brand issues, you name it. And I think as long as brands are sticking to that kind of very focused brand egocentric view, nothing will change.
Yeah, and I think that just to chime in there, I think brands need to understand that consumers are smarter than they are, because they are the ones with the needs,
Okay.
basically. So I think that there's often these talks about how brands must educate the visitors and stuff like that. And I think that's a mindset that needs to be shifted, saying that, okay, tell us what you want, and we'll really cherish that feedback that you have. And I think that two-way dialogue, I mean, a phone is a phone after all. So it's great to have two-way communication, even if the screen is small.
Tamara, who's doing good? Who's doing well at this, at consumption? Which industries?
The consumption metrics were surprising to me because Germany was really at the lead in terms of number of minutes. Benelux was also.
We'll take back your
Um,
names.
Okay, come on, give it
So
back.
The angst is over.
that was really surprising. You know, retail was actually doing quite well along those lines as well. Although I have to be careful with that, as you pointed out. If you're spending a long time on a retail site, that might not be good. That could mean that you're not finding what you wanted. But in general, consumption is usually a good thing. And when we looked at retail, it's going up too. So some of the things that, and by the way, this is all, consumption is much better in Europe than it is in the United States, which also was surprising.
Yeah. And we talked there a little about customer journeys and kind of customers telling a story and building emotional connections. I just want a quick show of hands. Who thinks a title storyteller is a good thing? Anyone think storyteller is a good
Job
thing?
title?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You're with it?
Yeah,
With it?
sure.
Okay. I think the debate's out, raging about someone calling themselves a storyteller, but I mean, it's key, right? I mean, it's how you build that emotional connection.
Yeah, I think there was a Pepsi Maxi advertisement going up. It was kind of along the lines of Blues Brothers. I don't know if you've seen it. But it was very serious of kind of ads that they brought in 3-minute or 4-minute clips.
Yeah.
And the way they did the storytelling was kind of a story that didn't have an end. And I think they could have gone on and on and on with the story. And the engagement around it was so good. But the problem is then all of a sudden there comes a new marketing director in, and that's it. So new strategy, new ideas, and although it was successful.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot. I mean, for us, I think consumption is this blend of art and science. I mean, Fred, who have you seen that does this well? This kind of building emotional connection, and you know, and what's the secret sauce for brands out there?
Well, there is no secret sauce. It's just hard work. You have to invest money and time, and to invest your best. Sorry, I can come up with any secret trick. That's what I tell to my customers.
Yeah.
To my clients, you have to invest yourself.
Yeah.
So convince your hierarchy that you don't chase a fly with vinegar. You know, this,
Chase a fly with vinegar?
yeah, no.
I like that. I'll use that.
So you definitely need, content is the raw material.
Yeah.
With content,
Yeah.
you can do everything. Without content,
Yeah.
just buy keywords. This is all you can do.
And
One
then-
of the things that
yeah.
alarmed me a bit was just that almost all the gaps, so the research looks at, is the gap widening between the best and the average? And almost all the gaps look like they're
They were
widening.
almost all white.
So it feels like there's a two-tier internet happening where the people who are learning are getting better at it, who
That's
discover
right.
content,
Or
discover
that they've
storytelling.
invested previously are
Yeah.
reaping rewards.
Right,
Yeah.
and I just wouldn't want to be one of those laggards on things like user experience. Clearly, user experience is paying big dividends. And to see that gap makes you think it's going to become a bit two-tier.
I completely agree, and in certain cases, for example, financial services in general seems to have not moved to mobile browsing capabilities quite as fast as other industries. And I worry, in the United States, we have a little bit of a different system, I think, but we have more smaller banks, we call them credit unions. And in the United States, the credit unions are not keeping up technologically with my demands on mobile
Yeah.
and to be able to interact online with them. And I know it's harder because they have security and they have, issues of how, how you authenticate, and all of that makes it harder. But by the same token, I'm actually literally going to shift from my credit union to a very large commercial bank, which is going to, this is a foreshadowing of what will happen if you're not going to be capable with the mobile device, with the application, with the browsing. Then there will be potentially a downward pressure on smaller and medium-sized businesses because they can't keep up.
Mm.
I think that's actually a good point. I think it's far too complicated how we build up apps at the moment, how we build up mobile sites. Very often companies don't really think about what is really necessary in terms of content. What do I really need when I'm going abroad, or when I'm on holidays. I want to know, about the last Etsy museum or whatever it is, the latest news about it. I think this is one of the critical things, especially in the banking insurance industry. I've applied there. And what I'm seeing is basically, I was talking to the digital director, and I was saying, so what do you think of a mobile strategy, what they're planning? And he goes, which mobile strategy? We don't have any. And the reason is because they've been talking for 2 years about how are we going to set up all those apps, what is the benefit behind it. And I said, actually, what you need is exactly 3 things. You need to know the content that's relevant to you, so personalize the content that is consistent. The second thing is you probably have an agent that is looking after you. So I want to know what he does, and I want to see the content he shares on sort of social web maybe. And the third thing is your contract. Done. You don't need anything else. Forget about the rest. So it's a bit...
Yeah, and back to Tamara's point, I mean, one of the interesting things I think about a lot of US companies is they're also single geography, single language as well, and like come on kind of those brands who have to exist in a globalized world, right, where they've got to deliver that mobile app to customers across Europe and Asia and the Americas. And we heard a lot in the conference around delivering consistent and continuous experiences, right? It's not an easy thing. So I guess a lot of these brands are international brands. They need to do this, multi-language with different kind of regulations and so on. So Jerry, I mean, from your point of view, Doug mentioned that almost like two-tier internet, right? We've got the best of the best and the rest. What can those guys maybe in tier 2 kind of get up to meet the best of the best in terms of consistent customer experiences on a global scale?
I think one thing is to start looking inwards in terms of processes, and that I know that's not maybe the most sexy thing to talk about, internal
Oh, I love a good process.
processes and that sort of thing. But one thing that I sort of like to say to companies and to marketing and communication and PR departments is like, okay, I hear you. Maybe you don't have any technical skills at all, but you should still be able to put up a high converting landing page that looks good. You should be able to do this in 30 minutes. That's sort of a good test to see where you're at in your relationship with the IT department. If you have a set of pre-made templates that can do good work for you, because this will fuel your social strategy as well. Because you don't only have to work within the realm of Facebook, for instance. You can push traffic to where you can harvest it, which is basically your landing pages.
So how many are performing to that quality?
Not very many. However, I would venture a guess that the best of the best are really looking into these and starting to think about, you know, inbound marketing. They start to think about loyalty aspect. They start to think about customer experience over a lifetime.
Yeah.
You know. So I think that's separate, and that gives them a clear focus, for instance, on content. Because a lot of the tier 2, they're sort of like thinking, okay, now we have this cool thing which is digital, so how do we reach new people? How are we being creative about that? While the top tier, in my experience, they're sort of like, okay, but we already have people coming to us.
Mm.
How do we do a good job in catering to them? It's also like, you know, offering them a service rather than marketing to them.
Yeah.
And those who have sort of got that mindset, I think, from what I'm seeing as an anecdotal evidence,
Yeah.
at least, they are performing really well, and that's starting to pay off.
Yeah.
And those are also the ones that are producing the best content,
Yeah.
because they're producing the content to the existing audience.
Yeah.
They're not producing content to lure in a new, bigger audience.
Yeah, so I hear often this discussion around moving from attention to loyalty. So
Yeah.
Mark's been thinking about how do I wave my hand and notice me over here, but keeping people with you, over time is harder. And tomorrow, I mean, does the best give us any clues in terms of how people are performing in terms of experience or stickiness or those sorts of measures? I guess
Yeah,
you think about.
stickiness is that measure of whether or not you stayed on the site more
Yeah.
than one page. You could argue that one page visit is okay, and, you know, if that's something that you're after, but those stickiness rates are still, in general, less than half of the people who land on a page last more than one page in that visit. Almost across the board, it's less
Right.
than half. Best of the best are getting up to 70% of sticky, so that's a big gap, right? I mean, that if you're going to spend a lot of money to bring someone to your site, and as we can see from Google's revenue, they're spending a lot of money, so you want to make sure that it's going to result as much as possible in continuing
Yeah.
to visit. But those stickiness numbers they got a little bit better across most of Europe. The United States went down dramatically. So I think you know, perhaps you might be being a little harder on yourselves than you should be, because it looks like by comparison, Europe in general is doing a little better on that.
Yeah, and I've been lucky enough to talk to some of the speakers that we had on stage the last couple of days, and you know, they talk a lot about, it's very apparent to me that the ones that are doing well, and hopefully the ones on stage, they think more around experience. I mean, Fred, this whole experience as the brand is becoming a bit of a mantra in marketing, right? But what's your view on that, and how well are folk doing on really building great experience?
Well, as you've said, we can see a growing gap between the best of the best in terms of experience and lagging brands. And what we are seeing now is that the best brands, they are converging in their tactics. So